LBC 97.3. Ask Boris, in case you can't remember, is the show where you get to ask me about anything that's bothering you in London, any events coming up in our capital. And the numbers for you to get through, to put your questions to me and my mentor here, Mr. Nick Ferrari, who sometimes interrupts even though it's normally my show. The number that you want is 0845 6060 973 or email boris@lbc.co.uk, and you can watch it in high definition on the website lbc.co.uk. Now, before we get on to Zahid, who's in Canary Wharf, I just want to say something quickly, Nick.
Yes, of course.
And listeners, if I may, about upcoming event this Saturday. Absolutely fantastic event. It is now a year since an event that we held in London that was, if anything, even more extraordinary in some ways than the Olympics themselves, and that was, of course, the Paralympic Games. And we're going to be marking that anniversary with a fantastic celebration in the Olympic Park, where everybody is invited. It's going to be a National Paralympic Day, Saturday, 7th of September. All the sort of stuff that we had for the celebration of the Olympics, street theatre, dance, hog roast, you name it, it's all going to be there. Fantastic stuff. Get on down, and you can also try out all kinds of sport. Saturday the 7th, the Liberty Festival in the Olympic Park, an event for all the family. If you want to go and see some of the sport at the Copper Box, you can get online and sign up for tickets as well. www.london.gov.uk. There you go. Plug over. But I think everybody should enjoy it on Saturday.
And we'll ensure that we put a link on that on lbc.co.uk to get as many folk down as possible.
I would be obliged, because actually we were really blown away by the success of the anniversary Olympic Games and the huge numbers who came to the cultural events in the park. We were really surprised by the success of that. Now, Zahid, can we persuade Zahid to come to the Olympic Park? Over to you, Zahid.
I most certainly will be there if you're going to be there, Boris. I've always admired you.
I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there on the Saturday. Oh well, okay, right. We've got a date. I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm kicking something off on round about Saturday lunchtime.
Okay. I look forward to seeing you there. But let me tell you why I've admired you. I've admired you as somebody who's always believed in something and gone after it and done it. Whatever you've stood for and whatever you've got your conviction from, you just put it into action and you get results. Now, I don't quite understand. I mean, you introduced the show as something about the capital. I mean, okay, fine. You're entitled to your opinion as Boris Johnson. If you want David Cameron to have a second vote, that's, that's fine. You want to talk about Syria. But as Mayor of London, would you want to make it your business? I'd reckon not. But anyway, that's by the by.
I understand you. I understand what you're saying, Zahid. You're saying, why am I? Yes. Well,
Second thing is, you're not really known for handing out olive branches. So why would you want to bail out David Cameron?
I think the issue that we're talking about, Zahid, is one that's of great interest to, I think, most of all of our listeners, and that is, what on earth do we do about this nightmare in Syria, where you've got a guy who has used chemical weapons against hundreds, possibly more than 1,000 people, according to the Americans, have died. And I've been very, very hostile and sceptical about British involvement in Syria. We all remember what happened in Iraq. But Zahid, if you see someone gassing innocent civilians, that is a chilling memory for people in Europe of what happened in the 1930s and 40s and of the cost of doing nothing. And
I totally agree with you.
If there is, so what I've said is that if it can be proved that it really was the Assad regime that was responsible, and there's more proof coming in, there's more evidence still coming in, and if the Americans, who after all are the only real power that can, has the men and the materiel to deliver any kind of retribution, if the Americans can come up with a plan that is coherent, that is limited, that is punitive in some way, but doesn't actually engage the West in some long-term commitment in a Syrian conflict, then I think there is a case for Britain looking again at whether we or not we should participate. That's my view.
Zahid?
But I would have expected you to do something very different, Boris. If you'd been at David Cameron's place, I would have expected you to say, this is wrong, we've got incontrovertible evidence, we're going in there.
Well, I see what you mean, Zahid. Okay, but that
period.
I don't know. I don't know whether we have.
Let's let the mayor answer, Zahid. Back to you in a second, Mr. Mayor.
That's very interesting, Zahid. But I don't know, and maybe you have better information than me about this. But I don't know whether we actually these days have the unilateral capability ourselves as Britain to deliver that kind of result in what I think is a very heavily fortified area of Damascus. I mean, as far as I understand it, Assad's air defences are very sophisticated. You'd need, quite a complex operation. I'm not sure that Britain can do it on its own, and that may be a sad reflection of what has happened to British defence spending over the last decades.
How come David Cameron got it so spectacularly wrong, Mr. Mayor?
Well, you say that, Nick, but in the end,
he
what's
lost
happened?
The vote. The Tory party rebelled in a way that hasn't been seen for years. He suffered the biggest impact. What do you want me to say?
Well, I think there's been a lot.
He got it so wrong?
I think there's been a lot of exaggeration and hyperbole about this. I really do. I was.
What, you think he got it right?
I was reading the papers on the morning of Friday morning. Britain has been reduced to a mere, nothing. There's nothing.
Paddy Ashton was depressed.
Paddy Ashton.
He was finding it difficult to be British.
Paddy Ashton was finding it difficult to be British. He was more than normally depressed, and for Paddy Ashton, that is saying something. A man who passes most days in a state of moderate gloom. I mean, he was even more cast down than normal.
Yeah.
And and then. I think if you look at what happened in the almost immediately, everyone said, we're globally irrelevant. The Americans will do it without us. The French are now the number one ally of the Americans, and Monsieur Hollande is going to be leading the campaign in Damascus. Actually, complete stuff and nonsense.
Okay, so you think David Cameron played a blinder?
I think David Cameron has been in the lead on this from the beginning. I think that he was absolutely critical in getting President Obama to focus on this. And I think as soon as it became clear that the British Parliament had reservations, the importance of the British Parliament was underscored by the decision of Barack Obama immediately to reverse ferret, as we say, to say, we're going to put it to Congress and to have a longer period of examination and reflection. And I think many people in this country will think that is the right way forward. Let's look at the evidence in more detail. Let's see if we can come up with a really coherent and
a new motion before Parliament.
A thought out approach. Well,
this is what you wrote on yesterday's column.
That may not be necessary if Congress, after all, votes it down. If Barack Obama can't deliver the votes on the Hill, and he can't get Washington to behind him to back military action, then I think there's probably nothing will happen. And,
well, hang on. Earlier in this piece,
if on the other hand,
you dashed off on Sunday afternoon, you said that we cannot allow this to go unpunished.
Yeah. If on the other hand, as I think more likely, if you just let me finish, as I think more likely, the Americans do vote for action, which is would be their tradition. I mean, the Americans have a horror of appeasement, of bowing. The one British politician Americans all say was a loser is Neville Chamberlain. The idea of not standing up to dictators and tyrants they find abhorrent. So I think they will vote for action. And in those circumstances, yes, I think it would be appropriate for us to look at what new evidence there is, look at what the Americans are actually proposing, see whether it's coherent, see whether it's limited, see whether it's commensurate with what has happened, see whether it would deliver a plausible outcome, and then yes, I think it would be reasonable in those circumstances for Parliament to think again. Because the one person who is really on the spot in this actually is the Labour leader Ed Miliband.
Now, how did Mr. Miliband fare?
I think he was absolutely catastrophic. I think everybody, all the commentary I read suggested he made one of the worst speeches people have seen in a major debate of that kind. It was not at all clear what his personal position was. I mean, this guy has had days to think about it. What is the position of Ed Miliband in the matter of doing something about Syria? Is it do something or do nothing? Now, he's sort of going around claiming that he's the victor of the do nothing party, but actually he's simultaneously saying that he's prepared to do something. Well, which is it? He needs to make up his mind.
And lastly, what will bombing Syria achieve? Well,
it depends what you mean, and it depends what the mission is, and it depends what the plan is. But what it will achieve is it will show that in the end, when a tyrant decides to use unlawful weapons, gas, to murder innocent civilians, we will not stand idly by. And that is something I think that is very important.
All right. We have other calls, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Zahid, by the way, sir. If you could introduce the next caller, we'll bring it in.
Yeah, Fiona in Cheshire.
Oh, hello. Hello, Mr. Mayor. I actually run visually impaired tennis for blind and partially sighted people in Cambridge and Hertfordshire. I run a visually impaired tennis Hertfordshire for juniors, and we've had speed tracing sessions for under 11-year-olds, and they were fantastic kids. And I'm actually on my way to Cambridge today to run visually impaired tennis today. What I am concerned about from the legacy of the Paralympics is the funding is not coming through full to my group.
Okay.
So
well, Fiona, obviously you're not in my area, unfortunately, but one day you should be.
Yes. When are you annexing Hertfordshire?
No, we're gonna, Fiona.
We actually have people come because there's a lack of tennis, visually impaired. There's actually people have come over
the border.
What is your direct question, Fiona?
Basically, I would like to know the legacy for disabled people, to get more disabled people into sport.
Okay.
We are not seeing any money coming from the LTA to support any of our projects.
Okay.
Let me try and help you, Fiona. I will find out about what the LTA is doing to support your organisation personally, and what they're doing to support your partially sighted tennis programme. But we are certainly putting money into it in London, and we've put, I think, about £16 million into sports projects of one kind or another, or we're going to over the next couple of years. In fact, we've done about 40 million over the last few years. And there are 13,000 coaches across the city who've received help from us, support from us in one way or the other. If there's more we can do to help partially sighted tennis training, then obviously we're onto it. I'll ask Kate Hoey, the Sports Commissioner, to have a look at it immediately. Okay. And if I may, if that's okay, Fiona, I'm going to go now to Raj in Stanmore.
Fiona, be sure to send details in. I'll make sure they get across to the Mayor's office. Mr. Mayor, thank you. Raj, you're through to Boris Johnson.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Boris.
What is it, Raj?
Boris, you may remember me. You came to Stanmore a while ago on the Boris bus, and I'm the guy who shouted out about Tesco's. It was a while ago.
Yes.
We've got 3 issues in Stanmore, and we're getting it's a game of tennis for us as well.
Okay.
Now, the set of traffic lights in Stanmore, there are a death trap. We've been constantly going in touch with TfL, local councils. No one wants to know. We need you to intervene.
Death trap traffic lights in Stanmore.
That's right.
Okay,
it's
Raj.
It's a crossing that doesn't give us any indication of what's going on.
Is that what you raised with me last time, or was it?
No, last time I raised with you with regards to Tesco's, because we've got someone else going in there.
I remember. Okay,
now,
well, look.
We've got a new State Chamber of Commerce that started. I'm the actual chairman, and now we've been approaching also the local council for funding with regards to lights. They keep on putting us onto the GLA, saying they provide our funding for lights. GLA passes us back to the council.
For traffic lights?
We've got no help. That's because of traffic lights.
Okay,
we're also trying to get in Christmas lights on the high street.
Hang on, Christmas lights or traffic lights? Well, perhaps you could combine them.
Apologies. Apologies. Let me clarify. My apologies.
I mean,
traffic lights are the first issue.
Red, yellow,
traffic
green,
lights in the
Christmas
shape of holly. It would be lovely. Father Christmas.
Raj, listen, I think seriously, we're going to get on to the problem of the traffic lights in Stanmore. I know that TfL, they'll be my team on roads, on surface transport, will be listening to this, and they will know immediately what problem you're referring to. Normally, they will try and produce all sorts of explanations for why such and such needs to be in such and such a way. Let's look at it and see what we can do to help.
All right, thank you for that. You mentioned that's Transport for London, did you? You mentioned there, Mr.
I did.
I've got an email from Hannah in Barking. What did you say to Peter Hendy when you saw the news about his romance with an escort girl?
Do you know, I don't think I said a thing. And if I could think of something to say to him, then I would. And my view about this sort of stuff, Nick, and I don't know whether is that this is not something that affects the incredible job that Peter Hendy has been doing as Transport Commissioner in London.
There are allegations that this young woman benefited from free Oyster cards. Allegations, I hasten to add.
Well, no such allegations have been substantiated. But you didn't check? That doesn't seem very plausible to me.
You didn't check whether she'd enjoyed free oyster travel, courtesy of Sir Peter.
I am sure that it has been, that someone has got to the bottom of it, so to speak, and someone's checked it all out, but there's no evidence that I have that there's been any impropriety at all, or nothing.
It's also reported that Sir Peter
that
shared
affects
private conversations that he had with you as you were touring the Olympic site. That doesn't, again, if true, that doesn't bother you.
I didn't see any evidence in the newspapers, and I have to say I did allow my eye to flicker briefly over the paper in question when I saw it.
So one of your key people could allegedly
come off it, mate.
romp around with an mate. Thank you. Could romp around with an escort girl, talking about private.
How about sir?
And it's of no concern.
I'm not allowed to call you mate.
And it's
all right.
No concern, mate.
Okay, all right. You know, you're going to get all stuffy on me.
No, nice to know that we're so friendly.
Right.
It's of no concern to you. We move on to other calls.
No, it's not, look, I mean, I didn't see any evidence of any impropriety. I think it's a completely private matter, and
should it be in the paper?
Anybody who follows what's been happening in transport in London over the last 4 or 5 years will know that there's been a radical transformation. It continues. It's being very largely led by Peter, and I think he and his team are doing a fantastic job.
And should it be in the paper? Is it a story?
Look, you know, that is a matter. That thankfully, I'm not the editor of a national newspaper at the moment.
Is that what you're moving on to?
I just don't wind you up.
What are you going to do? Have you found anything?
I'm going to continue to be Mayor of London as I never tire of telling you.
Yes, but after then, what are you going to do?
Something will crop up.
But what? It's what you said last time, Mr. McCorville. What is it? What is it going to be?
Well, that's a matter for it.
Okay.
It will have to crop up.
All right.
I'm going to leave it to events.
Let's go to other calls.
Look, quite seriously, on that point, you know, I'm fed up with the answers. I love doing my job, and it's the most absorbing, brilliant job I've ever had, and want to get on to it as well as I can. So I think we were going to Dale in St James's Park.
You are.
Okay. Dale.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if I ought to call you mate, because I'm calling on an issue about your talk with Sally Roycroft in Melbourne.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That's something that's quite relevant to me. I work with a club of mostly professional expat Aussies, a few hundred of them in London.
Yeah.
And they're over here for the long term, 5 years or something. Most of them have transfers with companies, or they have some ability to stay here on an Australian passport, or of course they've got patriality. And we're not talking about the walkabout Aussies, the hundreds of thousands who come over on a working holiday visa or a tourist visa, but the ones who are working here full time.
Yeah.
So that's an issue that's come up a lot. It's been an issue that the High Commission's been very concerned about as well. So I'm just wondering if we have some kind of skilled labour test, if we have people who have a certain education level, employment references, and so forth, why shouldn't they be on an equal footing with people from the EU?
Well, I completely agree. I mean, Dale, do you want to explain the problem a bit more clearly for our listeners? Because it's something that really struck me when I was out there in Australia and talking to Australians. It is very remarkable, and that this case is of a teacher who's really dedicated herself to the lives of kids in North London. She's worked unbelievably hard. She's got fantastic results. They've gone up. Their grades have all gone up. And yet she can't stay and teach in London because she doesn't have the right sponsorship or whatever from the council. It's very difficult for her to continue with a work visa. And I thought that was a bit odd, because if she was a Croatian, or if she was French, or from any of the 27 EU countries, she'd have no problem whatever. And, you know, here is Australia, which is a country that, after all, in 1999, voted to retain Her Majesty the Queen as their head of state. You go to Australia, the cultural continuity, the connections, the emotional ties, the family ties are incredible. And yet we treat them in this completely different way from citizens of EU countries. And I just thought it was very striking. And an idea that I think we should develop is of a as you were saying, Dale, some sort of labour mobility exchange, so that people in the UK who want to go and work in Australia, who also, find it very difficult sometimes, have much more liberty of movement. And when we have shortages, as we do in some of these jobs, then there should be absolutely no problem about recruiting people from Australia.
Well, it's better than that, isn't it? Because, of course, when they land at Heathrow or Gatwick, they, New Zealanders, Australians, have to queue. Meanwhile, the Germans and the Italians walk straight through, and we just wave them in. It's very strange when you consider the history of it all.
It is strange. I think it was, it goes back basically to the 1970s, when we were in a state of complete political cringe and self-abasement towards the European community, common market as it then was. We felt we were poor a nation. We felt it was all over, and I think basically we decided to cut our Commonwealth partners adrift a bit, and to go in with a deal that was very exclusive.
Quick response from you, Dale.
Well, the other side of it is that the UK and Europe itself are looking for other markets outside, and Asia's where those are, and Australia's looking for a doorway into Europe. So there's a made-to-measure relationship where the UK has access to the Asian markets through an English-speaking country that has the same culture, and Australia has access in turn to the European markets.
All right.
I think Dale is completely right,
Yep,
and what he's articulating there is the global vision for Britain's future. What you need is a future for our country that looks beyond the European market, which actually is a share of global trade has been shrinking in the last 10 years, 20 years anyway. And you want to be, and Australia's been growing throughout this the downturn that happened since 2008. It is, as Dale says, it is the gateway to many Asian markets.
You've just come back from Australia. Who's going to win the election?
Well, I think it's pretty... I mean, I may be wrong, but it looks to me pretty clearly that the Australians are going to vote for a change and vote for the Conservative, vote for
What's in
Mr.
Britain's
Abbott.
Interests?
I'm sure that the British government will work well with any Australian government, whereas, as I was saying just now, we're incredibly close friends and partners. I think I haven't met Kevin Rudd. I have met Tony Abbott, and he strikes me as being a stand-up sort of guy. I'm sure he'll do a brilliant job.
All right. Other questions, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please. Can we go to Steve in Trafalgar Square?
Morning, Nick. Morning, Mayor Johnson.
Hello.
Good morning.
Basically, I'm a chauffeur in and around the London area, and so you can imagine I'm in London most of the days. The issue is obviously with the buses around the West End area. I've literally just drove round Trafalgar Square, saw 7 buses, all top deck empty. Majority of the people on there, maybe at least a half on each bus.
Yeah.
And to get around the West End, from argument's sake, from say Trafalgar Square to Cavendish Square, it could take literally half an hour, and majority of the congestion is caused by the double-decker buses.
Well, Steve,
I
I hear what you say. I mean, I think often the reason buses appear empty is because they've discharged the great weight of numbers that they take during the peak commuter period, and they can look a bit less full as the morning goes on. I don't know quite exactly what time you were looking at these buses.
No, it was 9 o'clock when I drove through.
Okay, well, fair enough. But I can only repeat the general statistics, which is that the use of mass transit of buses in London has been continuing throughout the economic downturn. There is huge pressure on our public transport network. People love the buses and they use them in growing quantities. They remain fantastic value. I know that people complain about us having to put the fares up, but they remain fantastic value. We have all sorts of concessions and they provide a brilliant service. Obviously, again, TfL are going to be listening to what you say about the particular routes around Trafalgar Square. Anybody who drives around
full.
Well, we've got one eyewitness who says he saw several double-decker buses.
I think if I now asked people to ring Oxford Street, you can walk down Oxford Street on the roofs of the buses.
No,
there are that many buses. Let's be honest about it.
No,
exactly.
Wait! Before everybody starts beating me up,
go on then,
Oxford
mate.
Street, mate. Why are you so?
No,
why are you so
Mr.
sort of?
Mr. Mayor.
All right, I'm sorry, Sir Nick. On Oxford Street, we've taken a huge number of buses out. We've taken about 10% of the buses out, and we're continuing to do that. But if you're going to provide a comprehensive bus network for London, which is my job, you've got to find some way of moving the buses east-west.
But they're polluters, aren't they?
Oxford Street is the way.
But they are huge polluters, and you will possibly have been made aware of research done by LBC 97.3 that has discovered that many London boroughs are falling dramatically behind where they should be in European levels. We spoke with Simon Burkett from the Clean Air...
Simon!
Yes, indeed.
Is he on the line?
He's not, no, because we spoke to him earlier, but he's got this question for you, Mr. Mayor.
What new bold action will he take in this term of his office, not some sort of dream of 2020 for the next mayor? What will he do to tackle diesel exhaust in this term of office that he hasn't done already?
Well, we are continuing. Simon is a friend of ours who works. He's a Clean Air campaign for London. Actually, does a very good job of raising this up the agenda, and it's something I believe in very strongly. I'm a cyclist. Our air must be cleaner, and we actually have a programme that involves buying the cleanest, greenest buses in Europe. You'll be familiar with those beautiful machines,
I've travelled
the
on
diesel
them,
buses.
We've got the heating sorted out now.
It's impeccable.
Good.
Impeccable. We have a programme to reduce emissions from taxis.
Right.
And that is also very, very important. And you'll be familiar. We know I was the
But
first.
we're still a long way behind.
Only mayor to the first mayor to introduce an age limit for taxis at considerable political cost, and there'll be many taxi drivers listening to this who will effing and blinding at the idea of what we had. But we had to do it because everybody, including taxi drivers, want to have a cleaner atmosphere in London, and that is the way forward for our city.
But it's too slow, isn't it? It's what I'm hearing from Mr. Burkitt.
Well, Simon is in the business, obviously, of standing over people like me and waving his great, knout and whip, and flagellating us to do better and work faster and harder, and we are. I want to see I think he was alluding to earlier on, is I want to see an ultra-low emission zone in London by 2020. And what that will mean...
These new buses, how efficient are they?
They are the cleanest, greenest new diesel hybrid bus in the world.
So they're putting out as least particulates or whatever of any bus anywhere.
They are very, very clean buses. I mean,
you can take it to bed with you should you so desire. That would
be a very good idea. It'd be a very good idea.
You'd be all right with the fumes.
Yes, and we're going to get even cleaner. And we're trialling electric buses now. We're looking at hydrogen buses, which have zero. Both electric and hydrogen.
Had those,
buses.
didn't? Are those the one that gave off steam?
They still do.
Are they working?
They work beautifully. I mean, the trouble is they cost about £1 million each, so they are expensive.
Right.
And this is the problem. Simon, we want to do every single thing that Simon Burkitt exhorts us to do. The difficulty is cost and inconvenience. The other difficulty is you've got to be reasonable to consumers and to drivers. Now, taxi drivers have been heroic. They have accepted an age limit for taxis, and that is fantastic. And that means that's going to make a real difference to air quality in London. But we also want to see private highway. We want to see private vehicles as well getting cleaner. So by 2020, what we're saying is that new vehicles on the streets of London within the central zone must be zero carbon,
all right.
Zero tailpipe emission.
You mentioned the fact that you're a cyclist, as is well known, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure you're aware that London was virtually brought to a standstill last night. Thousands of cyclists demanding more space on the roads following a number of deaths. There have been, unfortunately, tragically, 6 fatalities this year.
That's right.
What action are you taking? How are you making cycling safer?
Well, we are going through a huge programme.
With respect, Mr. Mayor, you've been doing this for ages, but people tragically are still getting injured.
That is true, and I can't pretend to you, Nick, that we can solve this overnight, nor should we try to solve it overnight, because you'd make mistakes and you'd spend a lot of money that was unnecessary and wasteful. We are spending huge sums of money on improving our roads, £913 million on programmes to improve junctions, improve roundabouts, make it safer for cyclists across the board. And yes, I understand what the campaign last night was saying. They were saying, give us the space. Give us cyclists exclusively that space on the road. Now, I would love to. The difficulty is there are lots of other people, we've just been talking to some of them on the show this morning, who are contesting that space. This is a shared space we live in the city, and they need to use that space as well. What we need to get to is a state where people understand that there are going to be cyclists on the road and that they behave in a way that is sensible and prudent. And that goes for the cyclists as well. And I just remind our listeners that we are going through a big programme now of enforcement of the rules for cyclists as well. And the police are there. And if you jump a red light, there is an ever-growing chance, mes amis, that you will be done, and we will take £30 off you at the very least. Thank you very much.
And have you requested this of the Commissioner then, this enforcement?
Well, it's not for me to give, as you know, it's not for me to give operational
but you can make a
of that
request.
kind. But it's
guidance,
obviously very important that people feel confident that cyclists are going to obey the law as well.
So it's as much on the cyclists, of course, to play their role.
Yes, I mean, there's a two-way street. I mean, I want to see more cycling. We're encouraging more cycling. We're doing a lot to make cycling safer, but I want to see cyclists behave. By the way, we are now into the final phases of the Mini Holland programme. You don't know about this. It may affect
not
you.
Francois Hollande, is it?
No. We are investing about £100 million on a series of boroughs who are going to produce beautiful schemes for their boroughs so that they can. It'll all be like Holland.
It'll all be like Holland.
Well, that's the idea. It'll be just beautiful. And there are eight currently on the shortlist. I better not read them out because the disappointed ones will.
No, I'd love to hear the shortlist.
Well, I'll tell you. The shortlist are Bexley, Ealing, Enfield, Kingston, Merton, and Newham. Richmond and Waltham Forest are also shortlisted, but they've got to tweak their proposals a bit.
And when will the successful winner be announced?
It's coming up shortly. There may be more than one winner.
When will successful winners?
As I say, as soon as very shortly is the answer, and I think I've given enough.
We pause briefly now.
It will be early next year.
We pause briefly now. My mate Boris Johnson and I to allow the news coming up on LBC. More from the Mayor in a moment. You're listening to LBC 97.3, 9:30 news time. Lisa Aziz.
London Mayor Boris Johnson's told LBC 97.3 he believes America will vote for military action against Syria.
I think they will vote for action. And in those circumstances, yes, I think it would be appropriate for us to look at what new evidence there is, look at what the Americans are actually proposing, see whether it's coherent, see whether it's limited, see whether it would deliver a plausible outcome, and then yes, I think it would be reasonable in those circumstances for Parliament to think again.
It's as the United Nations says the number of Syrian refugees has now passed 2 million. Police are investigating a suspect vehicle parked outside TA barracks in Lower Morden. There are reports it's been there for 3 days. Witnesses nearby tell us they've been told to stay inside. It's claimed 2 children could be fighting for each primary school place within 2 years. The local government association says things are so bad, schools are converting libraries and office space into classrooms. And parking under a £200 million London skyscraper has been suspended after claims sunlight reflecting off it is now melting cars. Developers of the walkie-talkie building are investigating reports a driver's Jaguar was warped in the heat and its wing mirror melted off. At 9:15, the FTSE was up 9 at 65.15. At London's travel, the M26 remains closed westbound from the M20 through to the M25 with delays on the M20 from Junction 5 for Aylesford. And London's weather, a dry day with good sunny spells in prospect, highs of 24 Celsius. Right now in Pall Mall, it's 17 degrees. LBC 97.3, it's 9:32.
LBC 97.3. This is Ask Boris.
We're back, and Nick Ferrari is unprepared, but I am on the ball here, and you're through to Ask Boris on LBC 97.3, and we're going straight away to Jeff in Tottenham.
Thank God there's a professional in the studio. Well done, Mr. Mayor.
Who has a question for us? Jeff.
Good morning, Nick, and good morning, Lord Mayor Boris.
Good morning, Jeff.
How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Right.
No, I've been forbidden from calling Nick mate on this very,
you can.
very formal and professional show.
I'd rather enjoy that chumminess.
Any kind of chumminess is lèse majesté.
Right.
Jeff,
Boris.
Sir.
Boris, I don't know if you recall me, but I spoke to you several months ago, and I've got the highest regard for you, right? And as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of respect I have for you, but unfortunately, there's an issue that happened, which I reported to you, and it has not been resolved.
Okay.
And I'll go into it, basically what the situation was. I spoke to you about this problems that we having with these new developments that are being built around the Tottenham area. Yes. I actually live on the Ferry Lane estate where that incident took place, which led to the Tottenham riots. Now, what's happened subsequently, I've gone to one of the new developments that you've got on this estate, which is part of your First Steps scheme.
First Step scheme, yeah.
And basically there's no parking. Now you're developing other areas which across the road, which they also haven't got parking. There's new developments coming on board that haven't got parking. There's no facilities for cars whatsoever. To make matters worse, recently, Homes for Haringey have gone and implemented a botched consultation, and they've forced through parking policy, which has now caused even more problems for people that use
Can I ask you, Jeff, what you need a car with for your job, right? Is that
Yes, my job can take me. Basically, my job, it can consist of me being in London, central London 1 minute. Okay. Then I might be in Romford. I could be in Chelmsford. I could be,
so you definitely
everywhere.
you need a machine. Okay, well look, I think there is a bit of an issue here. Clearly, what we are, our policy generally is to try to encourage people to use public transport and to try and get people just to avoid traffic jams and to keep London moving. And we've been having a conversation earlier about jams in London. But I do think there is a question about parking in outer London. I will make sure and some of the stipulations that we enforce, and sometimes there's no doubt in my mind we have been too rigid, and there can be cases where a bit more parking could be acceptable. It's one of the things the Outer London Commission has been looking at, and we're thinking of. Can I have a look at these schemes? I'm going to get my team to look at the first steps schemes that you describe. What's the actual name of the place again?
Ferry Lane Estate. That's where the problem. That problem, and they've recently done an extension of the parking policy, which a number of residents don't agree with here.
In what way? What's the extension of the parking policy that they've done?
Well, basically, there was one part of the estate that had a reduced parking hours. They got the remainder of the estate at the back to go into a botched consultation where only 55 people voted out of all the people on the estate, and they managed to. The wording of the whole consultation was completely irregular.
All right.
There's a lot of
So, Jeff, is the upshot then that parking has been even further restricted on that estate? Is that the
It has. It has. And
can I just get the big? What I feel very strongly is we can't impose these kinds of restrictions unless we are supplying you in Tottenham, in Haringey, with with the big public transport schemes that you deserve, and that part of London, in my view, needs a real uplift in public transport. It's why I was so keen to try to get hold of that rail franchise, if you remember, to try and improve the rail connectivity. We've got to look at extending we could look at extending the Victoria line. Why not? And I want to look at both at the parking issue you raised, but also what I think is the fundamental long-term solution, which is to deliver better public transport solutions in that part of the city.
Jeff, stay on the line. Give your details to one of my colleagues. He will pass it on. Although I fear now that our friendship, Mr. Mayor, might be put in jeopardy. Because last time on Ask Boris, you took a call from Michael.
Michael in Blackheath, yes.
I'm one of many people still waiting to be compensated by the police authorities for non-attendance to my business that was attacked in the riots. The Metropolitan Police wrote to me and said that after collecting certain footage from CCTV, that they deemed that my incident didn't fall under the jurisdiction of a riot.
Michael, I tell you what we're going to do. I think we're going to have to take this up. If you be kind enough, we'll make sure that we get your details after the show.
Michael, stay on the line.
We'll get on to the police in your area and see what we can do to help.
Michael is the owner and manager of Raffles. It's a clothes shop in Blackheath. You know what I'm going to tell you, Mr. Mayor.
Are you going to tell me that nothing has happened?
Nothing.
Okay, I'm very sorry.
We also spoke with Samantha. We also spoke in the same episode or instalment or part of Ask Boris. This call from Samantha.
Samantha in Bellingham.
I wanted to find out what you were really doing to stop the young adults today turning into crime and turning into gangs.
I'll tell you what we'll do, Samantha. In Bellingham, in your area, I'm sure there are loads of fantastic schemes for these kids. I will make sure that we get you some information about exactly what's available in the area.
Well, now,
are you saying that neither Michael nor Samantha heard from?
Well, that's what we've been told.
Well, if that is the case, and it's inexcusable.
I hope you listened. That's what we've been told. So, if I could ask you to go back and check, that's what we've been told.
Okay. Well, no. Listen, it's very important that we follow these things.
That's what we need to do. I'm glad you agree.
I'm sorry if neither Michael, Michael should definitely have heard from the police, and I will make sure that something happens.
All right.
Within the immediate future.
Okay.
And Samantha, what I think we're saying to Samantha in Bellingham is she needs to be, informed about all the stuff that we're doing to help kids in Bellingham. That means, we now presumably have her details. We will make sure we reach out to her.
I'm grateful, but we are still mates, aren't we?
Well, I mean, I would sincerely hope so. I thought, Yes,
I'm pleased.
But it was you who were being a little bit standoffish.
Other calls, if you would.
John in Croydon.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, John.
Earlier in the year, you announced a 1.2% 1.2% reduction in the precepts, the GLA precept. Now, it works out for a Band D house is £3.72 a year, which is near a penny a day. However, that also equates to £9.5 million, which you've taken out of London's budget, and as far as I can see, purely for political purposes. How can you justify this?
Well, hang on a moment. Actually, I think if you talk to people who think about their budgets the council tax has been going up. It was something that I thought was wrong, and if you look at what we've cut in real terms, it's very significant actually. If under the previous mayor, his precept went up about 153%. We've cut ours in real terms by about 20%. We are going to continue with that process. I think it is only reasonable to bear down on council tax. Of course, it would be easy for me just to keep taking money out of Londoners' pockets and spending it on schemes that had no value. I think that's wrong. I think it's much more important to be frugal with public money where you can, and we've done the same, by the way, across the board. Look at what we're doing for the budgets in London Transport, where we've been able to continue with a full delivery of services, but to take about £5-6 billion out of the budget by getting rid of huge numbers of surplus buildings, loads of surplus directors and highly paid bureaucrats of one kind or another. And that is, I think, what Londoners expect a mayor to get on and do.
All right, thank you for that. Just a couple from me. Well, sorry, from emailers, texts and tweets. Barbara in Radlett, this is quite a quick one, Mr. Mayor. Has Prince George received his tricycle yet?
I knew that was coming. I don't think he has yet. I think the finishing touches are being applied.
Are you taking it personally, Mr. Mayor? He has. He has. Yes, it has been safely delivered.
Oh my God, it's been delivered. Right
on that bombshell, Mr. Mayor.
Someone has delivered the tricycle to him. Whether I know. By the way, I know that Kate and the Prince, or what should I call them, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, have made use of the tandem bicycle.
They have.
That was given to them.
Yes.
At no cost to Londoners, I just remind you. But
where?
I think in the gardens of one of their palaces.
They've been cycling on the tandem.
That's right.
Is it done up as a Barclays?
I don't think it has got. Wait. Yes, it has. I'm afraid
it is. It's all logoed up.
It is a proper
Boris bike.
Barclays hire bike.
It's interesting you call them Barclays bike, and everyone knows them as Boris bikes.
No, well, as I said to Barclays, if they give us another £50 million,
it's pretty good
for the hard bikes, I'll change my name by
Well, I think they should give more cash. You've got
Barclays
the Duke and Duchess. You'll do what?
£100 million. If they give us another £100 million for the hard bike scheme, I have promised that I will change my name to Barclays Johnson. In order to...
You heard it here first. Two questions concerning the Notting Hill Carnival. Simon in Caterham. Was it appropriate for police officers to be dancing with the public while the Notting Hill Carnival experienced one of its highest arrest rates? I don't know if you had sight of video of police officers doing that dance.
They've been dancing with members of the public since I was a kid.
Okay.
That's been part of the Notting Hill Carnival since time immemorial. And I would just point out to Simon in Caterham that if you look at the crime figures, they were I think if you look at the crime figures, the last 4 or 5 years for the Notting Hill Carnival, they've been sort of like 600, 700, 600, 800 reportable offences. This year, about 162 or something like that. They're way down. I haven't got the exact figures before me, but I looked at them the other day. A very good job by the police in keeping crime really low.
All right. And Elizabeth in Westminster asks, what are you going to do about the noise at Notting Hill Carnival after your sister's sitting room ceiling fell in? This is your sister Rachel, who, of course, did the article. Unfortunately, the noise was so loud, it brought the house down, wrote Rachel Johnson.
I don't know what percussive incidents may have taken place in Rachel's house to cause the ceiling to come down. Nor I don't know the exact geographical location of the bedrooms in Rachel's house that caused the plaster to come off the ceiling in the living room. But there you go. I'm sure that I leave this to the loss adjusters.
Okay. Let's get one last question in if we can. It's Stuart in Edgware.
Stuart in Edgware.
Absolutely.
Good morning, Boris.
Good morning, Stuart.
I must say I'm a Boris supporter. One quick thing.
Yes.
When are you politicians going to listen to the people of the country?
Yes.
You're not there to do what you want. You're there to do what we want.
Okay.
We are your masters, not vice versa.
Correct. Well, here I am.
The majority of the people of this country do not want us getting involved in any way whatsoever in the problems of Syria. There's the Arab League, there's Turkey, Pakistan. They can quite easily handle their own problems. It's not.
Well, I hear what you say, Stuart, and that is a strand of honest British opinion that has been that way for centuries, and it is a intellectually respectable point of view. I think for me, and I have a very, very strong doubts about us getting involved in any way in trying to change the outcome of the Syrian conflict, trying to get rid of Assad. We don't know who's going to replace Assad. We don't have a clue who these guys are in the Free Syrian Army, really. To what extent is their penetration by Al-Qaeda? All these questions we don't have the answer to. But if someone uses gas to murder large numbers of innocent men, women and children, it is very difficult for a civilized country like ours, a great country that has a history of sticking up for oppressed people around the world. It is very, very difficult for us just to do nothing, Stuart. That's what I think.
A sentence, Stuart, a sentence. It has to be for
very
time.
quickly. Well, his father used gas, you didn't do anything. Saddam used gas, the world did nothing. So why they suddenly...
Well, I'll tell you the answer to that. And the answer, just because you do the wrong thing once, it doesn't mean you should do the wrong thing again and again. And we did the wrong thing in the case of Hitler. We didn't stand up to him early enough. Yes, it's true that we failed to punish Saddam for what he did at Halabja. That is absolutely accurate, Stuart. Right. But just because you get it wrong once doesn't mean you should get it wrong again.
Okay, 2 questions. Final one from the emailers. Pierre says, "What have you got planned for this year's Conservative Party conference? I'll be there. Will you wow us all?"
Pierre, I will. I don't know. It's in the process of evolution. I think I will explain, Pierre, what I think is happening in this country, which is that the Conservative government Conservative-led government is going through a period now when some of the difficult things that they've had to do over the last couple of years are starting to pay off, and you're starting to see a real change in the schools. Huge numbers of new free schools. Huge numbers of new free schools announced today. The growth, manufacturing's picking up.
Cheerleader for the Prime Minister
in this country. And if you, Nick, you're asking me, am I going to stick up for what this government is doing? Yes, I certainly am. I think they are doing. They are. In the end, they had a very tough hand to play. The budget was shot to pieces, and they've had to put it back together again.
And lastly, sorry to finish on a bit of a low note, but we reflected this very much on yesterday's programme, and he really was an absolute unique television broadcasting talent. Sir David Frost, you must
yes,
have,
I know.
What
a great guy. Yes, I mean, I think he was one of those guys who is absolutely brilliant.
Did he ever skewer you? Did he ever sort of...
No, he didn't. And I'm just trying to think when I think I was on when he did the breakfast show many years ago, and he was very gentle in his approach, but incredibly well briefed. And and I don't think he would have minded if I called him mate. He wouldn't have. If I'd said Frosty, me old mate, he wouldn't have taken umbrage.
I didn't take umbrage. I was cheering inside to feel that our friendship has been so brilliantly refined.
It's because I've been in Australia.
Could have been worse than it could have been Cobber. That's it, Digger. We're done for another one. Fair dinkum it was too. Ask Boris will return. You're listening to LBC 97.3, 9:47.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. LBC 97.3. Call 0845 6060 973. Text 84850.
Get unbeatable finance rates on a new Chevrolet right now. Stand out from the crowd. Take home the Chevrolet Spark from only $7,000.